take a plane to another plane, to another plane, to another plane, bumping Baka not nice while I'm trapping in the rain. Give my computer a second, and we are recording. This is a very special emergency episode of Ezza Trips Falls. Where the fuck is the Donda album? It's July 24th. It's 8:11 p.m. right now. I have with me my second ever two-time guest on Ezra Trip Balls. Yes.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege, man. Round two.
I'm super excited to have you on again. It's my man Keenan Culler from Hollywood this week. How you doing, man?
I am doing fantastic, man. Thank you so much for the invite. It's so funny because we had talked about a couple ideas we had for like getting together again and doing this again. Yes. And then once all the Kanye West stuff broke, I think that kind of like honed us in on where we needed to go with this conversation.
Yes. Yeah, that pretty much sealed the deal. I've been definitely wanting to have you on again. We've talked, like you said, we spitballed sort of different little ideas, but this was sort of you know what, now's the time. Let's get together and let's hash this thing out. So we'll launch right into it. This has been, first of all, I can't believe that this is happening again because it's fucking deja vu every time. And you know what? And I lecture people like, man, he's fooling you guys again, and then he fools me again.
Yeah.
And it's just I just don't know, man. I don't know. Is it what? Okay, you just
here's the thing, right? At this point, he owes us the Donda album. And he owes us the Yandi album, which I don't even know if that's a thing, but I feel like it's still floating around out there somewhere.
Yeah, well, I feel like the Yandi album is kind of disintegrating into it. Some of it went into Jesus is King, I think, and now some of it appears to be going into this Donda album based on the track list. But yeah, I mean, I saw a tweet today that was like, wouldn't it be funny if you just dropped Yandi today? I think everyone would be happy with that.
It's kind of like going back to what we talked about the first time, like in the movie world. It's like the movie American Pie. This is like a deep cut reference, but there's that part when they're talking about how many people they've slept with, and it's like, oh, whatever she tells you, like you need to take that number and multiply it by like such and such, because like that's the real number. Right. And it's like that's how Kanye is with album release dates. It's like whatever he tells you, just add like 7 months, and then that's the real. Like that's the real.
There's got to be a formula, right? Like by now. And you know what's sad is like so we're gonna have to go back a few weeks here. So all this started really with the West Day Ever when he announced the Gap and all that stuff, and things seem to be going very, very well. He announced that he did all in one day. He announced that he did this 10-year deal with Gap, which everybody was like, wow, that's so fucking perfect, and what a move, right? Like everybody knows on the Spaceship song on College Dropout, he's rapping about how he worked at the Gap and he got fired for stealing and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
There's the whole history there and the whole full circle. And then, he writes that letter and they put it up at the Gap, giant display in Chicago at the Gap store. There was a few other things that same day. I think he announced the Wash Us in the Blood single release.
Yep.
That released also got really positive reception. Happened on time, by the way.
Yeah.
Things were riding high. That was, I believe, late June. July 4th hits. He decides to tweet that he's running for president. Now, me at this point, I'm still going, ha 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 ha, yay, it's album season, let's go, right?
Yeah, yep.
And then from there, things really start to go off the rails a bit. So I'm really curious on your take, because we've talked about how we need to talk about it, but we haven't really talked about it. So I'm going to just let you go in for a little bit on what the fuck you think has been going on for the last week or two.
Yeah, I mean, how like peak 2020 is Kanye just coming in like Leroy Jenkins and just, after all the chaos,
yes.
man, the country's on fire. We got a global pandemic. We got this election coming up, and here comes Kanye. Like, that's the last thing we needed is Kanye just bursting through the wall.
Blowing up 2020.
Like the Kool-Aid man, just being like, hey,
Yes.
let me give you some more. But
Can you believe it? Like, it's so it's perfect, but yet just too much.
I think this conversation is going to be interesting because me and you, as we mentioned the last time we spoke, I mean, we are so deep in the Kanye camp as far as just like believing in him, loving his content, loving what he does with his life for the most part. So I think this is going to be interesting because it's like, you know, we should probably admit that bias up front. But the thing is, even with that bias, I almost find this conversation more interesting because I think at this point, it's like 80% of the population would just come on and immediately say, the guy's crazy. He's a lunatic.
Yes.
Like, what does he do? Like, forget about him. And it's like, you know, I don't subscribe to that. And that's why I think our back and forth is going to be a little bit more, hopefully nuanced versus just, this is what it is. The guy's a lunatic, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Or just immediately attributing everything to, even if they don't use the disrespectful language of calling him crazy or psychotic or whatever, they may still attribute all of this just to, oh, he's, you know, he was diagnosed with bipolar, whatever, which obviously plays a big part in what's going on. And, you know, I don't think either of us are going to sit here and deny that there's definitely something going on with him mentally. But yeah, I think that our conversation will be great because it will shed that other light on. And even if we turn out to be completely wrong, I think the conversation will be interesting just in the fact that it's two people in complete fucking denial. And you know what? The conversation needs to happen.
So here's the thing. I was thinking of like, where do you even start with a figure with a guy like Kanye, especially when you're talking about clear signs that something is a little wrong with this guy, right? I think we have to break it down into two different camps. I want to start off with the idea of calling him crazy and everyone using that word, crazy. And what I go back to is you have a lot of normal, average people, which is fine. I'm one of them, but that are probably going to do, for lack of a better term, normal things in their life, right? Mm-hmm. Looking at people like a Kanye, an Elon Musk, people that do things that we don't understand, right? People that kind of take ideas and elevate them, and they're the people that get remembered. And it's like a vast majority of people that are only ever going to kind of do the quote unquote normal thing are then labeling someone like that crazy. Like, this guy is crazy. But it's like, yeah, but do you ever think there's a connection between what we deem as crazy and people that are remembered, people that make content and do things in the world that like last? You know what I mean?
Have an impact, yeah.
The so-called normal people out there, it's like, I'm not saying that's the case across the board, but a lot of times if you want to be remembered, if you want to do something truly special, you have to be a little crazy. And you have to be okay with being labeled crazy because a lot of people are not going to be in your headspace that you need to be in order to do those things, those things that are long lasting. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I guess where I'm going with that is I think part of Kanye is just, if you want to call it crazy, whatever, I don't think it's a mental issue. I think he's wired differently. And he just sees things differently. And I think that's where a lot of it starts. I think a lot of his ideas, a lot of his ambitions, it starts from a place of not bipolar, not like mental disorder, more like he just sees things differently than we do. But where I think the second part comes in, I think once he chases those carrots like a rabbit, right? And he goes, he's sitting back thinking, man, what would be insane? I want to be president of the United States. I want to make a gospel album. I want to, I want to do all these things. And it's like, it starts off something in his mind that he sees it in this beautiful portrait, you know, like the Sistine Chapel, like this. But once he starts going after it, I feel like that's when the actual mental disorder, the bipolar stuff, that's when it kicks in and it really becomes like, he can't go after things of that magnitude because it's like he's mentally, he can't handle it. You know what I mean?
Right.
If that I don't know if that was a little bit contradictory, but it's almost like his bipolar nature will not let him like I don't know how to word it. I'm kind of
So
in my
like,
head, I know what I'm trying to say, but it's almost like it starts off as good intentions and then it quickly unravels because of his actual condition mentally that he's
right.
kind of struggling with.
So do you think it's that, yeah, he's unable, like there's a disconnect between what he's trying to get to and what he's actually able to make happen, and that disconnect is caused by the fact that he does in fact have some sort of mental thing going on that that stifles him from being able to execute these visions to the perfection that he sees, you know.
Yeah.
And then
And
I think that drives him a little nuts, clearly.
and it's sad, man, because a lot of times, like if you read it, I was kind of looking into this past week, and it's like people that suffer from mental disorders, whether it's bipolar, psychosis, whatever the case is, they have like the lowest of the lows, right? They'll go into a deep depression. But where that creativity comes in, the reason he's able to make the kind of stuff he makes, make an album like Dark Twisted Fantasy, make an album like Life of Pablo, whatever,
Right.
is because when he comes out of that, he's at a place creatively where it's like everything is firing on all cylinders. You go from the lowest of the lows to the highest of the highs. And it's like, that's why a lot of people that we look at as geniuses are a little crazy, you know, because they have to go through those valleys, but it's like, man, when they're at the peak, they're peaking hard. You know what I mean? It's like two extremes.
Yeah, and that's kind of always been the pattern with him, right? And do you think that that's sort of what's happened? Do you think he intentionally throws himself into those valleys? Like, he's not, we all know, like, he's not dumb, you know what I mean? He's a smart guy. I think he's smart enough to know, like, in his hardest of hearts, when he initially thought of himself being the president, I think he was smart enough to know that that was not actually going to happen. And I think when nobody took it seriously, it started to make him be like, well, what the fuck do you mean? You know?
Yeah.
And then he took that as a challenge. And then, you know, I was rewatching, I knew obviously we were going to have this conversation tonight. And I was watching the South Carolina rally live when it happened. And at the time, I'm going, this is fucking brilliant, quintessential Kanye pot stirring. Everything about it, the flag behind him, the vest, the 2020 shaved in his head, the fact that there's no microphones and he had to like yell over everything about it was just so, oh my god, he's fucking doing the Andy Kaufman thing, like he's fucking doing a show.
Yes.
And you see it start to get real for him somewhere in the middle. But I was riding with him through a lot of that. You know what I'm saying?
And what you just said is a perfect example of what we were just talking about. It's like something that started off where he's in control. He's like, he knows what he's doing, even though it seems like he doesn't. He has a grasp on things, but then it's like he can't maintain that control. It quickly spirals into where you start seeing like the covers being pulled back, and it's like, ugh, like now we're into something a little more like raw.
This shit's too real. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, don't you think that there's some people too, just going into, you know, touching more on his mental state and just his overall like persona. There are some people, which we were talking about last episode with Saul Goodman wanting to flip the light switch when, you know, it just says do not touch or whatever that was.
That's yay, man.
There are people that specifically, however they're wired, you want to call it a mental disorder, whatever, they are like, they want to intentionally do what people do not want them to do. You know what I mean? And it's like sometimes for nothing more than just the fact of I did something because people told me I wasn't supposed to. Wear the MAGA hat, talk about such and such, talk about abortion, talk about this and this. It's like, ultimately, do I really believe that he's passionate about some of these issues? I don't think so. I think a lot of it's just an anti structure, anti falling in line, anti like, you think I should do this, so for no reason other than a middle finger, I'm going to say this, you know?
Yes.
It is what it is.
And that's also a big part of the pattern, right? He has always done that, and it's gotten more and more extreme every single time. You know, I found interesting after the he first announced he was president, and again, at that point, everything had still, there was no real signs that things were going downhill, because there was a bunch of awesome shit in a row, a bunch of great announcements, and stuff happening on time, and a bunch of great stuff. He makes the announcement for presidents, and then there's that Forbes interview, and that was when it really started to be like, everybody started to be like, what the fuck? He does that 4-hour rambly Forbes interview. But what I found interesting in that was when he was talking about how he got the idea to run for president. He said that he was just in the shower and he thought, I need to run for president, and just started laughing. And he thought it was hilarious. And I'm like, man, like, the fact that he's just so upfront and honest about that, first of all, and second of all, it just shows that, like, these commotions he stirs up around the time that he knows he's sitting on a potential masterpiece, and that are intentional to some degree. I you know, I've been having these conversations with friends, obviously, the last few days, you know, and at varying degrees of being convinced that I've just been in denial the whole time, and he actually is crazy, and like, to me, back to being like, nope, not at all, like, he's fucking in control, blah 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 blah. I've been at all stages of this, and having these conversations with people. And the thing that I like to bring up when it comes to his stirring up the commotions and whatnot,
Yeah.
oh fuck, where was I?
Well, no, you were just talking about as far as him being in control, or like if he knows what he's doing or what he's not doing, and how he was in the shower, you know, when he decided, I'm going to do this, and he's laughing to himself.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been trying to say to people that the fuck, I've
No,
totally
don't.
lost my train of thought, man.
No, don't worry. You'll get it back, because I am actually going to, I can piggyback off what you were
All
just
right, yeah,
saying.
go into it. It'll come back to me.
One of the things is, and this might be giving him, again, like, this is where maybe my bias is coming through, but like, I also think that a lot of these things, like running for president, it's like, in his mind, he knows that someone like him should never do this. And it kind of goes back to what we were just talking about with the middle finger to what you're supposed to do. But I think a
Yes.
lot of it, obviously, neither one of us, and most people, I mean, I'd say 98% of everyone, you're not going to take him seriously as a political candidate, obviously. It's
No.
more like putting on the MAGA hat. It's symbolism. It's like what he's trying to do with it. If you want to look at it like that, I don't think it's crazy. I think it's nuts. I mean, I don't mean nuts literally. I think it's awesome, I should say. I think it's awesome that he keeps pushing himself, and he keeps, like, he never wants to, like, stay here. He always wants to take it up a notch, up a notch. That can be viewed as crazy, but it's like, it's only crazy if you don't understand that it's 75% performance art. That's how you have to look at all this. It's to me, it's 75% performance art, Andy Kaufman, like you're talking about,
Yeah.
25% part of his bipolar disorder makes him think this is 25% real, you know?
Yeah, and that's perfect, because that reminds me what I was going to say. And the concerning thing is where that percentage shifts, right? And I think the thing that I've been saying to people that I couldn't remember and that I now remember is that I think he intentionally stops taking whatever medication he regularly takes to stay stable, intentionally knowing that he's going to throw himself into the fire and lose control. So I think that he, to some degree, and especially this religious faithful version of him, to him now it's throwing himself to God and letting God take control. When I stop taking my meds and I go into these situations that I know this is good, like, the genius part of me knows that this is going to go viral, and that this is newsworthy, and that everybody's going to talk about it. But the part of me that's going to just let this go to God is the part that's going to not take my medicines, maybe drink a little bit of Hennessy or whatever the fuck makes him go off like that, and show up to this thing knowing that I'm going to be met with opposition. Like, there's no way he didn't know that the abortion subject was going to come up at that fucking rally, and that he was going to tell that story, you know? When I
Yeah.
rewatched that thing today, you almost see him try to lead to, like, I think he wanted to tell that story. Yeah.
Dude, he knows what he's doing. I don't think he's as out of control as it seems. I think he has momentary lapses where he clearly takes it too far. But it's like, dude, at this point, that's just how the guy is. You know what I mean? And it's like, if you cut through a lot of the BS, there's legitimate truth to what he's saying. And it's like, yeah, you can say we're just making excuses for him, trying to find like the gold in the bullshit. But it's like, dude, his message and what he's getting across, it's powerful. It's just the messenger. He himself is a little bit flawed, but as far as the delivery, but it's like what he's saying isn't necessarily that crazy. I mean, yeah, the Harriet Tubman stuff, that was weird. That was just one of
That's a
those,
little wild. Yeah.
that was just one of those things where it's like, to me, I don't look at that as crazy. I just look at that as, again, like poking the bear. Like,
And he knows exactly.
like, what's some dumbass comment I can make? He's probably thinking of that in the car ride on the way to the thing. Like, what's some little comment I can make just to piss people off? You know what I mean? And it's like,
sure.
It is what it is. Dude, one thing I wanted to talk about, though, that does like concern me a little bit is I'm sure that you saw that Dave Chappelle like came to visit him, right?
Yes.
See, that worries me, man, because I don't know how tight him and Chappelle are, but you got to think, if Chappelle is going to get on a plane and fly to Wyoming and like just be with him for no reason other than just like, he's my friend, I want to be with him.
Yeah.
That makes you wonder a little bit, because I'm sure Chappelle like knows the real Kanye, like knows how he is, what's going on. If he was concerned enough to get on a plane and go check on him, it's like, man, maybe there is something pretty serious happening there.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of parallels between those two and just how they were. I mean, Chappelle has that famous speech on Inside the Actor's Studio about how maybe these people that we call crazy, in the entertainment industry, maybe they're not crazy, maybe they're trying to succeed in a sick fucking world, in a sick industry, right?
Yeah.
And so I imagine that Chappelle definitely is a kindred spirit with Kanye and definitely has a soft spot for him in that regard, so I think that he's somebody to look out for him when it comes to how he's being viewed by the general public, and specifically, and again in both of their cases, how he's being viewed by the Black community. I think Chappelle wants to look out for him in that regard as well, because I think there's a very, very clear possibility that Kanye has lost a lot of his Black fans over the last few years and a lot of his Black supporters with his behavior. And I think that, Chappelle doesn't want him to lose everything. You know what I mean? He doesn't want the Kardashians to be his friend's last hope for a fan base. You know what I mean? And
they don't want him. They don't want him to get Lamar Odom, dude. And
yeah, like I think that Kanye means too much to too many people, and people like Chappelle recognize that, and
I think
want
it's
to
a
help
testament.
him maintain that.
Yeah, I think it's a testament too, though, just to Kanye's like unbelievable popularity and success and just like cultural status, that he can have the last few years that he's had. And still, you just get this feeling, like talking about the Black community, it's like they don't want to give up on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
despite everything he said, all the bullshit. I mean, he said some crazy stuff that anybody else saying these things, they would have been like,
Gone.
forget about it. You're done. And it's like, man, he built up so much goodwill just with his talent and his music and just his status, that it's like, man, he's able to still be relevant despite the fact he's really just like doing everything he can to not be relevant almost,
Yeah, well, I think, and he just does. He's so much inspiration for people. I mean, even at that's I think a lot of his mission is also like wanting people to believe that they can accomplish things, because it's like the worse that he looks, the more it's like, damn, if he can do it, then I could fucking do it, And I said this on my last episode I had with another Kanye stan friend of mine, and I was like, when I saw him live at the Yeezus tour, it wasn't in the height of my Kanye fandom. I was a really big fan of him early on, and then I became a really big fan of him again around Life of Pablo. and shortly after I saw him on the Yeezus tour. But my feeling when I saw the Yeezus tour that I walked away from was that his entire like intention behind that performance was that the audience felt like they could do it too. He had the diamond mask on, so you couldn't even see his face. I got just an absolute feeling that he wanted the people to believe that it had nothing to do with him, and it was them that were making the whole thing possible. It was just a real surreal kind of feeling that he gave, and I think that's a lot of what he wants to do, is make people feel like they can do it too. And I think he's realized that the worse he can make himself look and still manage to succeed beyond your wildest dreams is like a testament to like, hey, if this guy with all these issues and all these, diagnosed mental disorders can still accomplish his dreams, why can't I? Why can't I break out of this fucking system? Why can't I break out of this 9 to 5 I hate? He
Totally.
just is a great example for so many people, and I think that's why we all don't want to give up on him.
Yeah, and like, kind of taking it back to what you were saying, just so I make sure I don't miss any points that I wanted to bring up. Like you were talking about him not taking his medicine for like bipolar. And it's
Yeah, I
like,
think that might be an intentional thing if that is the case.
no, I 100% agree, because I mean, as everyone knows, like those kind of meds, man, that like dulls your senses from what I understand, right? I mean, that stifles creativity. You hear everybody say that, like, you don't want to take these pills because I don't feel like myself. And I think that, again, going back to the valleys and the peaks, like he understands I might have to go through those crazy, crazy moments, those low moments to get back to the point where I feel like myself, like firing on all cylinders. Otherwise, I'm just in a consistently kind of like normal,
Yeah, yeah,
mediocre like status. And it's like,
stable.
I don't think that's where he thrives, dude. He needs to have those like wild highs and lows to feel like himself.
Yeah, and
I guess let
that's
me
why
ask you a
people get
question though.
scared for him.
What do you think happened between, like, let's just look at the start of his career versus now? Like, what's your take on why has it gotten worse? You know what I mean? Or has it? Or has he always been like this? He just did a way better job of kind of playing the game and kind of like going, appearing normal.
Yeah, well, I mean, his mother passing was the first major thing. That he's never been quite the same since then. He was certainly not by any means a run-of-the-mill human being before that, but a lot of the more off-the-wall stuff really started to happen after that. Now, mind you, by then he's already got himself a bunch of grants. Like he was very successful before that, but a lot of his like really earth-shatteringly, like, he's now world famous celebrity, household name everywhere you go. Everybody knows the name Kanye West. A lot of that happened after the passing of his mother, and I think that somewhere along that line is where he began to discover that peaks and valley thing and become self-aware of it. I think his level of self-awareness has grown and yet in some ways shrunk. Like, it's so strange. Like, even in that crazy presidential speech, he makes the joke about like how he's talking about how when him and Kim were thinking about aborting the baby or whatever, and he was wearing leather pants, and he's like, and he's making a joke about himself wearing leather pants, and he's like, what somebody must think of themselves if they're wearing leather pants. He's always just been very self-aware,
Yeah.
but then when he goes into those tangents, there's no self-awareness at all. And like that part of him seems to become less and less self-aware, but the creative part of him is more and more self-aware. But I think that self-awareness is what caused him to explore that peak and valley pattern intentionally. And I think that we've literally seen it get more and more off the wall every single time. I mean, just look at the pattern between the life of Pablo and now. You've got him he goes on that whole crazy Wiz Khalifa rant on Twitter because Wiz Khalifa calls out the name of his album. So that was kind of a lot of comedy gold in there. But that was kind of weird, right? And then that album has a bunch of different release dates, bunch of different track lists, same pattern as this, but it's all still kind of like, oh, yay, B and yay. That tour, he ends up fucking Jay-Z over, blowing his relationship with Jay-Z completely. That's a little bit concerning, doesn't seem to have much remorse for that, even right up until this day. Goes crazy on stage, and I'm finger quoting goes crazy for those who are listening, because I still to this day maintain that I completely agree with everything he said on stage.
Now, what are you talking about? You mean the tour when he went nuts on Beyonce?
The Life of Pablo, where he's on stage, where he basically ended up getting hospitalized and subsequently diagnosed with bipolar officially, was based off that final Life of Saint Pablo tour where he 20 minutes into this, he ranted for 20 minutes and he said, guess what, the show is done, and he walked off. Now that whole rant, I never saw a problem with anything of that. I mean, I saw a problem with the fact that he fucked over his fans that were there to see the show, and he fucked over Jay-Z maybe. But, that being said, classic era of music.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were going to go on there?
No, I was just going to, but real quick, that kind of goes back to despite his delivery, a lot of the stuff he's saying, there's nuggets of truth in it where you're like, yeah, he's right. Even though he sounds like he's, off the deep end.
But in the moment, you're like, this guy's going crazy. Then you look back on it and you're like, holy shit, he had some points, right?
I think it's really interesting what you said, and I think you're exactly right. You pinpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong, but his mom died after the homecoming or
graduation.
I'm sorry, graduation album.
Homecoming was a song on graduation. Yeah.
After the graduation album, and it's clearly those three albums flowed together. Where it's you could just see it was almost normal Kanye, friendly.
Yep.
His mom died, and so that definitely hit him hard. Then you look at his next three albums, right? He drops 808 and Heartbreak.
Yeah.
He really pushed himself, right? He did something that was daring. People thought he shouldn't do. That was maybe the first time he did something where he was kind of
super contrarian.
I'm doing my own thing. And
no samples at all. People thought, oh, he's not a musician. All he does is just sample other people's. All right, I'll do an album with no samples, all self-played. What now?
Yep. So he already has this kind of probably chip on his shoulder, kind of rough, this wall after his mom died of feeling hardened by that. He does this anti-establishment shit with 808. I mean, look, it wasn't like he was making some weird, Norwegian folk music or some shit, but he was doing something weird that people weren't expecting.
And nobody expected from him at all. The auto-tune, everything.
And the mullet, I mean, just think of everything. And it's
the mullet,
and look what happened. It blew up. People
changed rap.
It changed everything. So now he's thinking, okay, I listened to myself. I did my own shit. Now I'm going to go make my Mona Lisa. You know what I mean? Now I'm going to go make my, we were talking, the Sistine Chapel. Now I'm going to go make my masterpiece. And look what he did. He did it.
Yes.
He made his fucking masterpiece. And it's you look at the videos he put out, the Runaway, those long film, short films, but long music videos. He was completely in his own world. This is my vision. Boom, boom, boom. Again, he's doing what he wants to do. Everyone loved it.
Knocks it out of the park. Yeah, universal praise.
Greatest thing we've ever seen. Great at blah, 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 blah. And it's you can just see the trajectory, the slow trajectory to kind of get where we are. Because it's then he says, okay, I just made that. What's another anti-establishment, fuck everybody. And he makes Yeezus, which is just full of bizarre, sounds and things.
Industrial noises.
Industrial. That's the word I was looking for. And it's man, I was just telling you the other day, this album is a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Yeezus, it's something that I still think is ahead of its time. We still haven't even caught up to what that album is.
I still listen to it and I'm like, holy fuck, this is some different shit.
Dude, unbelievable, man. Awesome. And it's again, I don't think that album was really met with quite the praise that his other ones were, but
yeah, because it came right after the perfect album, right? So it was oh, nothing he's done, and I think you mentioned this in our last episode, actually, like nothing he's done since My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy has been just like a traditional album.
No, everything's been difficult. Everything's been difficult. But it's like
Yeah.
the Yeezus album, at least he was still kind of like on planet Earth. He was with Kim. I mean, he went on SNL. I know he went on SNL with Life of Pablo and shit, but it's just like, I felt like he was still kind of in control. I think everything after Yeezus is where it really started getting away from him. He didn't know what to do anymore, and it just kind of drove him crazy. Combining that with, let's talk about Kim Kardashian. Let's dive into that.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of where she came into the picture.
Again, just like on Ye himself, my take on Kim and the Kardashians changes on a moment-to-moment basis. Sometimes as I'm speaking. I really, really, really felt in my hardest of hearts that Kim had Kanye's best in mind, as her number one concern. I felt like she was a very, very supportive wife to him in times where she could have been like, oh, I'm so tortured, blah. You know what I'm saying?
100%.
She has been incredible, and she's done things that she didn't have to do. Showed up to his crazy release parties wearing the crazy tie-dye clothing, was in his music videos, just constantly shows up and shows out for this guy, right? Who she does not have to do any of this for, right?
Nailed it. I was just going to mention that. I'm like, she's one of the few people on earth who does not need him. Like, she doesn't need him in any way to be relevant or in the public eye.
Nope. If anybody is better at staying relevant than Kanye, it's the Kardashians, right? So they don't need his help doing that, right? Mind you, he has helped. But yeah, so I really love Kim. Now, mind you, that family as a whole, I really don't know how I feel about that as a family business. I think you got to be some sort of fucked up. You know what I'm saying?
100%. Yeah.
I think that in itself is crazier than anything Kanye has ever done. You know what I mean? Just the idea of our entire family business is going to be just putting out our bullshit, our drama. Yeah, and our children, right? And again, these are these crazy tirade tweets of Ye's. It's like, yeah, he's talking about worrying about his daughters being raised by people who have a very clear pattern of thrusting their daughters into being sexualized. Yes. Now, mind you, those girls are all adults. They make their own choices. But, I mean, come on. There's a fucking pattern there, right? There is a goddamn pattern, right? Would you not, even as somebody who's not a devout Christian, you'd be concerned for your daughters being raised in that family, let alone somebody who has now had a Christian reawakening and is now a very devout Christian. You're now looking and going, holy fuck. One of my favorite lines was, Chris, call me if you're not busy planning one of your child's Playboy shoots. He's still got the comedy, man. He's still got the comedy.
Incredible.
Moments of it.
Well, I mean, just touching on that real quick, it's crazy how, a lot of people were thinking that, Kim was the worst thing that could happen to Kanye. Like, this is such a train wreck. This is going to be like too, nuclear.
That's part of why I stopped supporting him for a little bit, honestly. Like, I wanted him to get with some cool artsy chick.
But the thing is, look at it like this. There are probably very few people on earth that can deal with either one of them. And it's like they kind of are that person, because they're both so like egotistical and like self-centered in a way, to me,
and self-serving.
Like, they somehow like probably get each other on that same level of like, when I need to go do this, you're gonna understand, except in the case of Meek Mill, but you're gonna understand because like we're on the same level, you know what I mean? And it's like kind of similar to how, remember when Jay-Z used to like rap about Beyonce and how she was her own star and had to go do her own thing? There's like a whole song about that. I can't think of what that was, but it's kind of like a lot of times celebrities just get each other. They get the lifestyle. They understand like everything that comes with it. And Kim and Kanye are so just on a different planet that like they might be the only ones who can get it, who can coexist. But real quick, I want to mention what you said with Kim, because I think you're exactly right. I mean, think of all the time she could have left him and came out with all the positive publicity, all the attention on her, all the sympathy from everybody. There was no benefit to staying with him if it wasn't real. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like if she didn't genuinely care for him and want to like have this
Yeah.
family, she would have been out 15 different times.
Yeah. I mean, and everything you just said applies to this time. I mean, I read, fuck, I've been so hurting for Kanye content this week for anything positive because, because we've gotten so little from him other than, a lot of, varying coherence. I was reading different tabloid articles, the sources to the Kardashians, or
Of course.
multiple sources close to the Kardashians tell us this, that, or the other. And I'm going, fuck, making me sick, right? Saying that Kim's trying to leave him, Kim is tortured, Kim this, Kim that. And then Kim comes with that statement earlier this week. And
Yep.
I had a tear in my eye, man. It was the most beautifully written, just like not putting the blame on him like at all, just like giving him his due credit in the scenario and asking everybody for their patience. And I know, I'm not a fool. I know there's a part of that it, she is saving face for herself to some extent there. But again, as you said, she could do that in a much more effective way to completely make herself look innocent and completely put it all on him and play the victim and make him look horrible and get away with it, and use that as her shtick forever. But she's not doing that. She's continuously defending him and continuously, seemingly, just trying to have his best interests at heart
I mean,
at all times.
like we'll never really know. I mean, unless we'll never really know the truth. But it's like you got to think a lot of this stuff is like episodic with like these bipolar issues and stuff, where it's like think of all the weeks and the months that go by when we don't hear anything. It's just like
Yeah.
neutral. I mean, we don't know what's going on then. Like maybe I like to believe he's just a relatively cool, like he's a good husband. He's like playing with his kids, you know what I mean? And maybe he just has these little moments, like you said, he stops taking the meds, whatever the case is, where it flares up. And it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, this is incredibly embarrassing right now, but I know that's not like truly him. You know what I mean? So like
Yeah.
it looks bad to us because we only see the big headlines, like Kanye does this, but we don't see him on like a random Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. when he's like playing with his kids or just getting coffee with Kim, whatever, like just bullshitting, talking. Maybe that's kind of what we need to focus on as far as like why she's not just bailing on him, because we don't know it.
No, clearly there's there's some redeeming qualities there, right? And that, I'm sure a lot of them are the same reasons that we all forgive him all the time, but there's also a lot that are, as you said, stuff that we never see, just in their family life, like obviously, despite what he seems to be saying now, they both seem pretty happy a lot of the time,
But don't you think too, though, he kind of, again, maybe I'm just giving him too much credit. I feel like the divorce shit is like him just trolling, because he knows, I mean, maybe not, but like he knows everybody is talking about that. Like, oh,
Yeah.
they're going to get divorced. Kim's going to leave him. Kim's going to leave him. So I feel like he's kind of just like throwing blood to the sharks. Like, oh yeah, like Kim wanted to, like, I was going to divorce Kim. Like, yeah, I don't know.
Well, she certainly didn't seem to take it to heart, so I think you could be completely right about that, because her statement was after all of that, and she didn't even mention none of that. She didn't even she's just like, yeah, he does this sometimes, So I think that this type of stuff probably does happen, and here's the other thing is, to me, something that is extremely telling is that neither Gap nor Adidas nor anybody else has backed out of or canceled anything with this man this week. To me, that says that either there's some sort of actual clause in the contract that says, hey, by the way, I have this disorder and I'm prone to these episodes, and you're not allowed to cut me out of this if I spout out some crazy shit, you know what I mean? Or, whatever,
Yeah.
fuck, I hate that I keep saying crazy and nuts. There's so few words for
It's
this
just kind
stuff.
of it's kind of the
Yeah.
default.
Yeah, right. So, or, one way or another, they're aware that this is a possibility. You know what I mean? I don't think that anybody is making an extremely lucrative and risky deal with Kanye West without knowing or having done their research that there's some risk of liability there, for your reputation, right? But the fact that none of them have cut anything out or made any statements, like, I think that they have probably been made aware by Kanye himself / Kanye's people. Kanye's fucking rich. He's got experts around him. He's got smart people around him. They probably put in the business deal like, listen, we can't, he's going to have an episode every now and then. It's temporary. He goes back to normal after, a couple weeks, whatever. And then it's going to be business as usual. Let's make sure that we're not canceling any of these deals based on some shit that he says while he's having a manic episode, right? I think that could very well be the case. And if that is the case, then I don't think anybody who doesn't know him really needs to be worried, because clearly the people that do know him anticipate these things and set up contingencies so that it can be taken care of if he does go off the deep end a little bit, so that he doesn't lose his business, so he doesn't lose his family, so he doesn't lose his children. I think that he is smart enough, and the people around him are likely smart enough to set up, to have controls in place for this type of thing happening. That's just, it's hard for me to believe otherwise when he's got that much on the line.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I agree with everything you just said. And I think in the year 2020, if you're getting tied up with Kanye, whether it's personal or business, you know exactly what you're getting into. You know what I mean? Like, you'd have to be a dope to sign a contract with Kanye, and then he says something crazy and you're shocked. Like, oh my God, I can't believe Kanye would say that,
Well, I mean, look what happened to Nike, man. They lost likely billions of dollars of not continuing that deal with him, and he went on to save Adidas. That was another point I heard made, though, was that he does tend to partner with people and companies that need him more than he needs them. So,
hey,
like,
and you know what's funny? You know who that's like? That's, I mean, to a degree, that's kind of like the Tarantino effect, like who will go and pluck these actors that are has-beens, or the Travoltas, the whoever, and kind of Michael Madsen's, and he'll kind of boost them just with his own talents of in this case he's doing it with brands, but sometimes
and in this case, it makes it very difficult for those brands to then turn around and cut him off, because what do they got other than hoping that things go well with the Kanye? What does the Gap really have other than hoping the Kanye deal goes well?
You just imagine there's like an executive just smoking a cigar, and they're like, "Sir, Kanye just said Harriet Tubman didn't rescue any slave." He's like, "I don't give a fuck." He's like, "Make the khakis, damn it."
That's fucking hilarious. I know, you can imagine, man. 2 weeks in to the announcement, he's fucking talking about Harriet Tubman.
Hey, this would be imagine this I don't even want to say reality show. Imagine this scripted comedy. Okay, how gold is this idea? Kanye signs a contract with some huge company, and there's just this brand new intern, this dorky little dweeb, who has to follow him around and keep him from saying crazy shit.
No!
Every time Kanye
damage control and shit.
Yeah. Every time he goes to talk, this little guy is like, "Oh God, oh my God, Mr. Kanye."
I imagine, BoJack Horseman. I imagine the little frog, the sticky-fingered, clumsy. Oh, I don't know. You can't pick up the phone. Like, oh God, what am I supposed to? I picture it being that fucking guy, just following Kanye and trying to get his shit together.
That's so funny, man. Yeah, it's interesting. Dude, one thing I would love to see Kanye do, and people have been asking for this forever, and I cannot believe it hasn't happened. Kanye really needs to get on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Oh man, I really thought that it would happen this time. Like I was kind of like thinking like, oh shit, this is the time. Like that's the perfect platform for him to just hop on and go off, you know? It
Because
still hasn't happened.
the thing that I like about Rogan, I mean, I just like that Rogan kind of approaches things, whatever the topic, whoever the guest is, he kind of feels like an everyman where he's
Yeah.
asking the questions and picking people's brains in the way that most of us would. It's not
Yes.
some bullshit fluff piece where it's like, like all the stuff he did before Jesus is King came out, it was all just the same questions, the same kind of like coddling of like, oh, do you think it's interesting that now you're making a gospel album? It's like, nah, I don't.
Yeah.
It's like you need somebody to ask like kind of tough questions without being a prick about it. Like,
Yeah, that's Joe Rogan. He's perfect at that. Like, you know, he just picks their brains in a normal. He doesn't have an angle, you know.
right,
He's just curious. He comes at it from pure curiosity, and I think that's why he was the perfect person to interview Elon Musk
totally.
twice, right? Those
And
are
he's like respectful, but he also isn't a pushover. So like if they say
yes.
something blatantly full of shit,
He'd be like,
he
hold on.
exactly he won't just let it drop. And I feel like Kanye kind of needs an interview like that to keep him in check and be well. I guess look at what he did with Sway. Holy shit, maybe not, but
Yeah, yeah. No, he'd be calling Rogan a white supremacist or something at this stage.
amazing.
But I still would love to see that. But yeah, let's get back into the timeline of things. So even as we were breaking that down, it was kind of blowing my mind because even before the passing of his mother, you see signs of the like, you know, at the time he first came into the game, you know, 50 Cent was fucking huge. Everybody was gangster. That was how you got big, was by being a gangster. He came in with the backpacks and the polos, right?
Amazing. Yeah.
Right. And that was kind of his whole thing. He was a contrarian in that way. And he was, again, the other thing was people told him he should only be a producer. He shouldn't rap. Oh, I'm going to be a fucking rapper. Oh, you're not a fucking rapper. People laughed at him. You can't be a rapper. You know, decided to be a rapper, ends up being one of the most successful rappers in the world. So that sort of pattern of like people telling him he can't do something, so he does it, was before. But it's almost it's crazy how it like literally grows and grows and grows and grows and grows with each album. Like it just keeps. It's actually probably measurable, like the exponential growth of like peaks and valleys that he goes into on his way to doing the thing. So like the life of Pablo, we left off where he ends up getting hospitalized after that. Now at this point he's with Kim Kardashian. You know, I've accepted that marriage at this point. I think most people have. They've already, you know, lasted longer than most people thought they would. She's famous for really short marriages already, and they've been together. I believe that they had a couple kids by that point. At least, I think one or two, at least one
Two. Yeah.
anyway. They had
Nori and
two.
Saint.
Yeah, I believe they had Saint by that point as well. Um, so it was, you know, people had accepted that that was a real family at that point, right? He ends up going to the psych ward, you know, coming out of that, and then sort of the weirdness sort of starts back up maybe early 2018. I think that was when, you know, he started to announce that series of albums coming. The Surgical Summer, the Pusha T album, Kanye, Kid Cudi, all that stuff, and that was
Amazing.
fantastic stuff. One of my favorite things that anybody's ever done.
His,
Just
I
as
would say his album was the worst of those, to be honest.
yeah, it
Do you
probably
agree with
was.
that?
That's a tough one. Nas's,
Yeah, you're right. Nas's was the worst. I think his was better than Nas's.
and I don't like calling Nas's the worst because I love Nas, but Nas's was the worst.
The Pusha T album was
But Pusha
ridiculous.
and yeah, Pusha and Kids See Ghosts were both better than Kanye's solo. But I think that was the intention. I think Kanye wanted the Kids See Ghost album and Pusha's album to kind of be the main attractions of that whole thing. And because they were such short releases, the 7 tracks each, he's like, I'll throw my own 7-track project in there just to build up the hype. And we'll go 1 week, 1 week, 1 week. You throw the Drake beef in there.
Oh my God, man.
But
Yeah.
that's when things start really getting like bigger in scale, let's say. So he starts with the famous TMZ interview Slavery is a choice. Loses a lot of people there.
That's a question. That's a questionable statement.
Yeah, definitely a questionable statement. Again, one of those things where if you know Kanye, you kind of have an idea of what he was trying to say. He's trying to say that we're still enslaved, and he said that in his music countless times. That's why I say if you know Kanye's music, you understand a lot of this stuff a lot better, because he makes these points a
In his
lot
lyrics.
better in his music than he does when he's talking. And I think that a lot of people don't bother listening to his music because of the character antics, and they're missing out on the meaning behind those character antics by not also taking in the music. That being said, so he does the TMZ thing. He had already announced the album. Later, we find out he rewrote and recreated the whole album after that. Now, he has some lyrics in there that basically say kind of, and even on the Kids See Ghost album, he's saying, "Oh, I want all the smoke, I want all the pain." He's kind of alluding to knowing that he has to throw himself into that chaos of like being butchered by everybody, being crucified by the media, being called crazy, in order to create his best material. Because I think after, like you said, his masterpieces and then Jesus, he kind of didn't know what to do. And I think he started with this, realizing that that's what he does. And he became very self-aware of that, and then started throwing himself into it. And I think that's where things start to sort of ping pong from there.
Yeah, and that's a dangerous place to be in when you start feeling like, you are now this person, so you have to act accordingly, where it's like, shit, I kind of lost all my good graces. I maybe had this episode where I said some crazy shit that I shouldn't have said, but now I feel like people view me that way. So I need to just kind of keep going harder and harder into that persona.
Yeah, he kept doubling down after that, because after that came the MAGA hat. And then I'll never forget, it was my first day at my new job. I just moved back home and started a new job, and I'm at work, and it's my lunch break, and I look at my phone, and my brother's like, I had a message from my brother, and it was like, this is happening right now. And it was fucking
Trump.
Kanye in the motherfucking Oval Office.
And he's like bear hugging Trump from behind. And Trump's like, "Oh my God, Kanye, no, God."
Like, and that's that whole thing again.
Hey, hold on one sec. I got to turn this light on. Hold on.
Yeah, no worries.
Sorry about that. It was just getting kind of dark.
Yeah, no problem. The Trump's presidency has had a lot of great moments for entertainment. I think that him allowing Kanye into that office and allowing him to speak as freely as he did is one of the greatest things Donald Trump did as president of the United States, because that moment is so legendary to me. As much as a Kanye fan, I'm supposed to hate that. I fucking love that so much, that was allowed to happen. And Kanye saw Donald Trump winning the presidency as an opportunity for him from fucking day one. And that's why he was there from fucking day one. He knew it, man. He's like, I'm going to use this shit. And he's been using it.
Dude, imagine this. Like, and now I'm just kind of like a little bit making fun of Kanye. But like, imagine when you have two people in a room and one of them is Trump, and Trump is the more he's the more like calm,
less outrageous.
Thank you, less outrageous of the two. It's just like, good
by
Lord,
far too.
But yeah, like imagine seeing Trump, and Trump is the one that's like feeling like, oh, is this guy gonna say something out of control? And it's like, if Donald Trump is thinking that, oh my God, man.
Dude, it was so good. And just the way that, again, like some of these situations that Kanye throws himself into, I see why he thinks that he's a god sometimes, because it's fucking magic what happens when he lets himself go. Because everything about that scene, just that image, the two of them there, Donald Trump sitting, him standing, he's got the hat on, he's in mid rant. Everybody around them looks uncomfortable. There's reporters with microphones. Like, just the fact that that was a real moment in human history is incredible. And I thought I felt the same thing with his South Carolina rally. The whole aesthetics of the whole thing was brilliant, man. It was the design of it, the everything blue behind him and him wearing the green military. I'm telling you, man, like when it comes to aesthetics and how things look, that is a big part of his genius, man. He is a visual fucking genius, and that's why his fashion design is as successful as it is. And every music video he's ever done, it breaks what a music video is, because he's a visual genius. And I think that when he has these episodes or whatever, like every time the scene that is created is so like perfect that it like gets stamped in people's brains forever. Like that image of him with the MAGA hat like over top of Trump in the Oval Office is stamped into people's minds forever. That South Carolina image with him with that green security vest with everything around him blue and him crying, like stamped into people's minds forever. Like he knows how to fucking make that impact. And it's sometimes when he's at his worst, you know, or what we would call his worst, that those, like you said at the beginning, like those impactful, lasting things that really make impressions on people, that's when they happen, is when people go quote unquote crazy.
And the thing is, it's like how, I mean, you're exactly right. And it's like what we want to do as the normals. It's like we want to say, because I always find myself thinking this, I'm like, man, he has this opportunity. He's with Trump. He's on that stage in South Carolina. He's on SNL, whatever. Like, imagine if he just toned it down a little. And it's so funny because everything you say about Kanye, you can say about Donald Trump. It as well.
I know.
But it's like, you just think like, man, you're in this situation. If you just toned it down a little bit, you just took it down and realized.
Yeah, man. It's like, you have some points, dude. Don't ruin them.
Totally. But the thing is, then I come back and think, the reason he's in these spots is because he is who he is.
Yeah.
If he didn't go that hard, if he wasn't that,
he'd never be in that room.
Never be in that room. No, he just.
Oh man. You know.
So it's
life,
like,
man,
it's crazy, man. You can't
duality.
You can't ask somebody to be anything but what they are, and it's like ultimately he just is an incredibly unique human being that's given us, you know, to me, some of the best music and just the best content, the best like cultural moments of our lifetime,
and altered the course of everything he's touched, you know, culturally. I don't think anything that he has set his foot in has not drastically changed as a result of it. Like you could not say either music or fashion or music videos or anything of that would be the same without Kanye West. Like it just would not. And I'm not talking just rap and streetwear. We're talking all music, all fashion. He influenced everything from the 2000s on. And you know, very few people would take that away from him anymore. Even the naysayers of him now would still give him the credit of that, and that in itself just says a lot, you know. But these things do seem to be, you know, if we're going to be real, seem to get worse, seem to progress. He goes from the hyper political to hyper religious. Now, I don't want to say that that's worse, because to me, I'd much rather him be a hardcore Jesus devotee than a hardcore Trump devotee.
Mega,
you know. But again, and it you know, what is more outrageous than a right-wing rapper, a right-wing hardcore religious conservative, you know, almost you know, what you would consider redneck values rapper.
Who said George Bush doesn't care about black people and used to rap about nothing but just like banging like every possible thing in front of him every second of the day.
Super horny dude. You know, now he becomes a preacher, which I, again, I'm not a religious guy, but fully behind it, you know, like in my mind, he needed an artistic direction. And he is not the first prolific artist to use a religious awakening as an artistic direction. Now, that's not to say that it's a fake religious awakening. I totally believe that when he started doing the Sunday service, that really did alter something in him. And I was saying to my girlfriend earlier, because she's going, oh, you know, he's a religious. She doesn't know much about Kanye, but she now knows how obsessed I fucking am. So I'm
Well,
trying to
you gotta teach her, man.
I'm trying to educate her, right? But she's obviously now turned off immediately by all the religious stuff, and I'm just like, imagine like the timing with which he had this religious awakening and everything, all of the fruits of his labors really started to come back to him, and all of these blessings really did start to fall on him. Like he really did go from being millions of dollars in debt to being a multi-billionaire in a matter of years. Now you can look at all that and go, well, that's just coincidence. All that would have came to him regardless whether he happened to have a religious awakening then or not. But it's like, if you were him and your entire life and your entire career has been you doing things people said that you shouldn't and you following your heart anyway and being proven right time and time again, you come to the realization that, hey, it's not me, it's God. I'm just following God. There is no Kanye West. I'm not working for Kanye West. I'm working for God. I'm not even thinking about my best interest. If I was thinking about my best interest, I wouldn't do half the fucking shit I do. I'm literally going with God. So he has this realization that he works for God. He's doing the Sunday service, making some of the most beautiful music. I mean, a lot of people don't like the gospel stuff, but it's some of the most incredible stuff that he's done.
The
In
Sunday
my
service
opinion,
stuff, yeah, absolutely.
fucking beautiful, right? And like Jesus is King is not his best album by any stretch, but I still think it's a fucking great album and totally holds up in his overall discography. Like it totally belongs. Like
There
it's
are
there.
moments.
Yeah. Um, so to me that was like totally, again, like it was on the correct trajectory for me. You know, I'm like, this makes
Yeah.
sense. This totally makes sense. It's outrageous, but in a good way, because here he's been saved. You know, that was the whole thing. You know, like he's good now, whatever it is. It's just like Alcoholics Anonymous. If somebody gets off of drugs or alcohol and becomes, you know, a god, a Bible thumper, fucking great. You know what I mean? It's still better than them being a hardcore drug addict or alcoholic, right? And I looked at it the same with Kanye. Like if if finding God or finding Christianity is what saves him from all his suffering and all his struggles, then I was in full support of that. And I honestly believe that that seems to have been what happened. And then all the financial and all the deals and stuff that fell on him afterward, like if you were him, you would honestly believe that Jesus and God were rewarding you for finally proclaiming them and ditching all the secular stuff, because that is the fucking pattern of the timeline of what happened. And that's what I was trying to tell my girlfriend. I'm like, if you were Kanye West and you like were always told no but believed in yourself, and then you convinced yourself that that wasn't you, it was God, and then all the fucking blessings fell on you after that. Jesus Christ, you know, like pun intended.
Literally, yeah.
You know, he really risked it all, and it all fucking came back to him still, without him being the egomaniac, without him making it all about me. He made it all about God, all about Jesus, and then boom, billionaire, boom, this deal, that deal. You would be fucking religious too, man. You'd call yourself a Christian billionaire genius too.
I mean, this is kind of a tale as old as time, and this is something that has happened before. But I think it's a testament too. Maybe like bring this up to your girlfriend as well, just if she's kind of like not understanding where this is coming from. Imagine how powerful it is, and like what a message it is that you lived your entire life on top of the world. You had all the money you could ever ask for. You had literally everything. You had every girl you could ever want. You went to every spot on the planet, did anything. You lived like a king. And it's like, what do you find out at the end of that journey? And this guy found that out in his 40s. Thank God. He found out he's still empty. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
most people don't realize that until it's too late. And it's like he did everything you can do as a human being. And it's like, what did it get him? He's still miserable. And I feel like that's when you start turning to things like God, whatever you want to call it, and you realize there has to be something more, right? There has to be like
Yes.
a higher calling, a bigger purpose. And I think it's cool that I want to believe that's genuine. I echo everything you said. He probably looks at all those things as blessings coming from God, but I also look at it like he went around the merry-go-round, like a
Yeah.
king, and he came out on the other side realizing it was all for what, you know?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's cool that he kind of discovered that now versus on his deathbed, or some people wait until the end and then they realize like what was it all for. And I think he kind of woke up early.
Yeah, I think that's real deep and real profound. And and I'm an honest believer that, though I don't practice organized religion, I believe that it all is just different language for explaining what is a universal human experience, for trying to connect with what there is more than what's in front of us, right? And I fully believe in that, and I think that's why we both love the show Lost, and we
I
love
was
the
just gonna
fandom,
say, dude. I
they
was just gonna
explore
say,
that, right?
trying to explain religion is literally like Lost. It's like one of those things where it's like everybody kind of just dissects it in their own way,
Yeah, and it's ultimately it's all just pointers pointing to the same thing, right? Now, I believe Kanye West has also always been pointing at that spiritual side of humanity through his music, through the progression of his albums. Um, his journey has always sort of been the hero's journey, the Christ story. I think he's always tried to manifest that consciously, and I think that's why he's had the heroes that he's had, your Walt Disney's and stuff like that, because their specialty was telling that story, that hero's journey story.
Sure.
And I think that Kanye always was conscious of that. And I think that the ultimate hero's journey story is the Jesus story. So I think that Kanye being what he said he loved about Andy Kaufman was Andy Kaufman does everything literally, takes everything literal. He literally wrestled women. It wasn't an act. It was performance art, but he literally did it.
Yeah.
So to me, that's what is more of like a literal expression of spirituality, of the law of attraction, of whatever you want to call it, than Christianity, the Bible, God, Jesus. There's really no other fucking language for it. He's tried to explain it every other way. You know what I mean? He's tried to explain, I'm a God, you're a God. People didn't understand that. He's
Yeah.
tried to explain, like, I manifested this with my mind. Nobody understood that. All this fucking, spiritual stuff that people get into, Kanye's been saying that shit in interviews and people have been ignoring it for years. You know what I mean? So he's like, all right,
Yep.
well, trying to explain it all those other ways didn't really work. It didn't really get accepted. I'm just going to fucking say it like Jesus, God, whatever.
Yeah.
And when he started doing that, he started getting all this in return. I think that, again, it's Kanye's nature to just double down, double down, double down. Next thing you know, he's not only praising Jesus, but he's, saying that vaccines are the mark of the beast and abortions are the devil and what I mean? He's fucking went to that straight up literal, he
Yeah.
performs literally.
Yep. Andy Kaufman, dude.
Andy fucking Kaufman, and Andy Kaufman was quote unquote crazy too. You know what I mean? There's something wrong with that motherfucker's brain. He clearly was, maybe not bipolar, but he has something going on, and you have to, to put yourself out there to that degree and risk yourself to that degree. Like it takes another type of human being,
Yeah.
man. Like,
so we were saying at the beginning of the show, man, you're exact. It takes something different than just the average,
and then to go deeper and deeper down that level. And I think that's where I eventually wanted to get to was, he goes to the extreme of being a preacher, hanging out with these mega church guys, doing a gospel album, all that. What's more extreme than that? Well, now I'm going to run for president and I'm going to be an old school, in God we trust American president, which I find it funny that nobody brings up the point that pretty much every goddamn old white president forever talked that same fucking nonsense up until the last few years, up until Obama. Pretty much every goddamn president ever was anti-abortion and anti-homosexuality for that matter. God, at least Kanye the Christian is okay with homosexuality and understands that abortion should be an option. Every other president before fucking Obama was pretty much against all that shit and talking even crazier hyper religious shit. George Bush, may God guide us in war against Iraq. You know what I mean? They all talk that shit. When a fucking black guy does it, you know what I mean? But anyway, that's a whole other point.
No, you're exactly right, though. Same message, just different messenger, and that's,
right. So that's what's possibly more extreme than being a complete preacher, is being a fucking politician, preacher, God, America, all of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's now combined all of the shticks from the last 2 years into one big fucking thing. And what scares me is that, I just don't know what's next, man. And I say that every time, and maybe that's, and it weirdly just hit me, but this is a very strange connection, but it almost reminds me of of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, that whole universe. You always think that the characters are as powerful as they're ever going to get, and you're like, how are they possibly going to raise is there going to be another villain even more powerful than that? And there always is, and it just goalposts always keep widening. And that's kind of like Kanye in a sense, where when I'm in the midst of this, I'm always like, all right, he's maxed out on his outrageousness. There's nothing he could possibly do more outrageous than this, and every time he does it. But this time I'm seriously what
can he do?
This is it, man. He really needs to call it after this. And I think maybe a part of him maybe even knows that. And that's why he's just saying one last time, I'm going all the fuck out. And here we are right now on July 24th. And still.
Is it out? Did he put out the album yet?
Still no album. And still everybody is going crazy. Now, here's the other thing. Everybody say this has happened before. This has happened before. Album release date, this, that, or the other. He's never going to do it the same, because every other time this has happened, we've gotten something on the day, even an update.
Yeah.
Something. Today, absolutely nothing. Now, there's murmurs going around that so-and-so's at the ranch. There's a bunch of people at the ranch. They're filming videos. They're working on the album. They're doing this, that, or the other. But it's radio silence. Nobody's tweeting. Nobody's talking. Kanye hasn't said a word. This has not happened before on release day. All right?
What do you think that means?
I don't know how this motherfucker continuously does the unexpected over and over again. That was the last thing that I read before I called you, was somebody commented, why can't he just do like Jesus is King and say, hey guys, the album's coming? And the answer was, because it's Ye. He just cannot do what he's fucking supposed to do ever. I think personally, this is where I'm at right now. And again, day to day, my opinion has changed on what's going on. First of all, I have to say that Kanye is an expert at bringing people into the present moment. And I think that is one of his main goals, is bringing people into the present, bringing people into the now. Because a lot of the hype trains he creates is bringing people together and making people pay attention to what's going on right now. Everybody wants to know, what is he doing now? Where is he now? Who's at the ranch now? Everybody's hyper focused on talking to each other. He creates these moments in time where a community of people are all focused on the same thing and focusing on the present moment. And I think he likes to hold people in those moments. And I think that a lot of what brings us into those moments as people is novelty, something new, right? You've seen something 1,000 times before. It doesn't register your brain. It doesn't wake you up out of your hypnosis,
Totally.
It's when you see something new for the first time that you get that awestruckness, that it brings you into the present. Kanye is an expert at always remaining novel, always remaining new. He's never ever the same. Even though you're seeing the same like cycles, the same pattern, he's always keeping it fresh, always keeping it new, always keeping it novel, never does the same thing twice. And I think that's why he's such an expert at bringing people into the now, bringing people into the present moment.
Yeah, do you know what I equate that to? I was just having a conversation with somebody about James Cameron, the director, and how he's a director who every time he drops a movie, I mean, you go back to Terminator 2, Aliens,
Yes.
True Lies, then he did Titanic, then he did Avatar. It's like this guy is always on the cutting edge, and it's like you don't know the vibe or the style or the look or what he is going to drop, but it's always going
until
to
it
be,
happens.
Yeah, it's always going to be epic as hell. And I love the Marvel movies, but it's like, man, you just know going in, like, this is what it's going to look like, sound like. And it's funny because the Logic album just dropped today. And to be honest with you, I've really only gotten into Logic on his last probably like 3 albums. So I don't know like the earlier stuff. But I started listening to it on the way home, right? And I just listened to the intro track. And it's like, I like it, but it's like as soon as it starts, it just sounds so like I've heard this
like Logic
7,000 times, man. Like I've heard this. It sounds literally like his past 4 albums. Like here's kind of the jazzy, like, you know, like little cymbals and shit. And then here's him just in the background, like, yo, Bobby forever. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, God, man. Like, and that's what you said. Like, it was weird because I remember I was hyped to listen to it and I turned it on. And for some reason, like I was still kind of vibing with it, but it was so like, I just felt like I've already listened to this exact song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's good, but it's just like, that's why when Kanye, even if his stuff isn't as tight, isn't as well put together, especially the last few albums, it's always like piques your interest. Like, what is this going to sound like, you know?
Yeah. And I think that's where everybody is at, like right now, as we speak. I think that he is more or less aware of everything that we've said on this podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think for as much as fans like you and us can examine and analyze him, I honestly believe that he's analyzed himself 100 times over more than anybody gives him credit for. You know, I think that most people look at him as that guy with no self-awareness, as that guy who doesn't realize what he's doing, and that I think that just couldn't be more wrong. You know, like I feel like he has gone over all this in his brain so many times now that he just knows the deal, he knows the score. I think that this time, I do think now, for all the good stuff I said about Kim and all the stuff I said about them together and stuff, part of me does believe that there could be a chance that they were trying to figure out a way to end the marriage, just because I think that they probably, I think anybody looking at this can agree that this is not fair to Kim, right? Like, for her to, like, now mind you, she probably does a lot of stuff that's not fair to him either, and maybe that's why it just can't go on forever. And I think that they're both smart enough to know that. There's been rumors circling, mind you, rumors are rumors, blah blah blah. Now, I think that he may have gotten a sense, or knew, or they've already talked about to some degree, was aware that the marriage was going to end and that the family dynamic wasn't going to be the same anymore, and he wasn't going to have, and all the stuff that he wasn't going to have in the same way anymore, or whatever. And this is just me speculating a possibility, but I'm leaning toward this being the case right now. I think that he was aware that was on its way out. He's aware that he's sitting on all this fucking awesome music that probably just needs finishing touches and last mixes and stuff like that, and to be put into a cohesive package, which is probably his favorite part. You know, that's the fun part for him, is making it into that piece, you know, making it from all these songs and all these ideas he's got scattered across hard drives and stuff, and turning it into that masterpiece. You know, I think that that's his favorite part of the process. And I think that he found himself at a point in time this presidential election's coming up. He can make a big splash without, there's still plenty of time till November for people to forget about his whole campaign, right? I think he's aware that he didn't want to actually affect a really serious and important election. I think he wanted to make a splash, make his wave, prove that he could, and then get out. I think he found himself at a point in time where his marriage was slipping away anyway. He had this presidential campaign idea sitting there to begin with since 2015, really.
That's what I was going to say. He's been talking about this for years, man.
Right. So he found himself at a point in time where it's actually within reach. The actual two presidential candidates both look horrible, and he actually might look all right next to them. He found himself at this point in time where it's like, you know what? I have all these things going for me right now. I might lose my marriage and lose my family anyway. I'm trying to put this album together and put it out soon. There's riots in the streets. People don't know whether I'm a fucking white supremacist or a black supremacist. You know what I'm saying? I think he just found himself at the point where he was like, now's the time. Fucking flush those meds down the toilet and let's go.
See, where I get a little bit like I want to know a little more is just with the music in general. I want to know, like the Jesus is King album or like the Donda album that's hopefully coming soon. Do you think that is like the focus for him, where he legitimately has been working on this and is like, man, this shit is so good. Like I have to put this out and build like a movement around it? Or do you think the music is almost more like just some little like afterthought? Because sometimes the way it's thrown together, it's so like we're experiencing right now, like discombobulated. He's recording vocals like the last 10 seconds before they put it out. And it's like, I wonder how much of that is like, he just feels like, okay, I have all this attention on me now. Like, give me those old samples. Give me those old beats that I did. Like, I'm going to put something on this. And then he just gets excited and he's like, new album coming in 2 weeks, Yandi, and then he's like, oh shit, I got to actually like make an album,
I think that it's easy for that perception to be the case, but I honestly believe that it's all about the music, and people will say that's fucking crazy because music doesn't make nearly as much money as his clothing does and all his other ventures do. But honestly, I really believe that it's all about the music for him. I believe that he like, and I make music too, right? And the way that I have always made music, and me and my friends have always made music together, and this is not to fucking try to compare ourselves to Kanye, but it has always been that way, where like
that's the driving force.
The whole like the industry says like, oh well, the album's going to be ready, and then you got to wait like months and months for us to put together the promotion, and then we got to put together and then finally the single's going to come out, and then months later the album's going to come out. Independent artists, like, we always knew that was fucking bullshit, that model was like not conducive to really being creative and really being an artist. Now take that and put it in the internet world where everything is now. Now you put out an album now that you made a fucking year ago, and you put out, you spent all this time, all this year, like forming how you were going to put out the album, that. By the time you actually get to when the album drops, all that material is completely irrelevant.
Sure.
So Kanye, in my opinion, just found a way to put out music to the mainstream in a way that is actually conducive to the artist. A real artist actually is second guessing himself till the very last minute. I can tell you that, you know what I mean? Like, an artist is not going to be completely satisfied with a piece of work and then sit on it for a year and then put it out and still be happy with it. There's going to be like, you know what I mean? You're going to be like, fuck, I should have changed this, that, or the other, like this.
Yeah.
I believe that his working on stuff to the last minute, what appears to be him just throwing shit together and whatnot, is actually the way that artists are. And I think that he is whittling down, he may have like 50 songs, and he actually is trying to whittle down those 50 songs into a perfect piece of work that all goes together and strings together. And I think if you, even his least well concocted pieces of work, like the Ye album, like Jesus is King, like you can't really sit down and put a pair of headphones on and listen to those albums and tell me that there wasn't a lot of time and effort put into that, between the writing, you know what I mean? I think for him, it's all about the music and the fashion, because to him, that's part of his art. Like those two things, I think to him are pretty close to equal, but I think it's mostly about the music, and everything else is direct. And honestly, the music, Kanye is about making impact on individuals' lives, you know? And I know I'm kind of rambling here, but give me a sec. One point that I love that he made when he got sent to the psych ward after that like Life of Pablo speech, blah, blah, blah. I think he said this on the Dave Letterman show. He was talking about the whole getting diagnosed with bipolar, this, that, and the other. And he said that there was a moment when they brought him in and strapped him to a table and he couldn't move, and they put him in a room by himself and left him there, and he wasn't allowed to talk to anybody or see anybody or know what was going on or contact his family or anything. And he said that he was so thankful that he experienced that moment, so that he knows that people experience that all the time and he could change that moment for people. And that, I think, is something that that's a part of like the way his brain works that people don't get with. He really is focused on how do my words and actions affect individual lives. He's not concerned about how it affects the mass perception. I think he's concerned about how it affects individuals and what affects more people on an individual, personal level, day-to-day lives than fucking music. Nothing. Nothing even comes close. And I think he knows that. I think that a lot of what he does around the music is to get as many people to pay attention to the music as possible. And if he can win over even a fucking 100 people that wouldn't have listened, that are now listening and are now fans that weren't before, but they decided, dude, I got to hear what this crazy bastard does musically, and listened. I think that that's worth it for him, because I think he knows that everybody that finds a connection to his music is changed. I'll say it myself. Like I would not be the same person if I didn't get Kanye. Like if you,
totally.
You know what I mean? So I think that it does. I think, you know, it really is about the music for him. At least, you know, I fucking hope, because I really want this Donda album. But I think that this time he knew that his family life was in jeopardy anyway, and that he was at this pivotal moment where there was low-hanging fruit for him to pluck, as far as the politics and the George Floyd and the COVID and all this. Like he could just grab 2020 like a fucking forbidden fruit, right?
Oh man,
He was a Bible metaphor, and he fucking did it, right? And now I think these last couple days he's just going in on preparing this masterpiece. And again, maybe that's just me being hopeful, but I think that he threw himself into the pattern, said, fuck it. If I have to lose my family, if I have to lose my children, this is it. I'm fucking going in. And I think this might be his last hurrah, man, because I think even he knows he needs help after this. But I think he's like, okay, probably somewhere in his head, he's like, all right, I know that I need help, but I'm in the fucking zone right now, and I'm about to make the best shit I've ever made, and I'll worry about the family shit later. I'll worry about ruining my marriage later. I'll worry about the shit I said about Harriet Tubman later. I'll worry about Meek Mill later. I think these last couple days, he's in the fucking zone, and somewhere he knows that he's going to crash, and it's going to fucking suck, and it might be the lowest low he's ever felt. And I think he's just avoiding that. And
he's trying to stay high for as long as he can.
And I think that's why we don't have that fucking album yet, man, is because once that album drops, what's he got? You know what I mean? That's, you know.
I also, I mean, you just made 57 great points right there. I think, I know you really did. Like I was agreeing with everything you were saying there. I think with the Donda album too, I'd like to believe there's no way he would name it after his mother and not put his heart and soul into it.
Yeah, that's the other thing, right?
Shit. And I think you have to look at these albums, like the last three, you have to look at them like separate from the release window. If you just look back now, years later, months later, and just listen to them, they're fantastic. But I think he gets himself into trouble because the release is so frustrating, like we're experiencing right now today.
Yeah.
I agree with everything you said about creating a buzz, getting everyone to kind of zone in and be like, when's the album coming out? When's the album? But the problem is he almost takes it so far that then when he puts the album out, you're already, I mean, maybe not you, but like I know me to an extent. I'm already a little like frustrated just with the fact that he fucked around for so long, that then even when it comes out, I'm still going in hype, but I'm kind of like, fuck, man, like I would have been more hyped if you put this out like 2 weeks ago. Yeah, like when I was at maximum hype instead of like
so true.
Thinking
and
about it
like
every day.
Nothing can possibly live up to that many, like getting your hopes up and getting let down, and getting your hopes up and getting let down. Like nothing can live up to that.
Yeah, because then you listen to all those albums and you're like, okay, was this worth it? What, like, do I feel like he put that extra like fucking us over for 3 weeks to like, you know? And so
was it necessary? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
but it's like a movie. It's like movies, right? You go in with super high expectations, and a lot of times you walk out, you're like, you know, whatever. But then you go back a couple of years later and you watch it again. You're like, why the fuck didn't I like that? Like, it just wasn't what I was expecting. But like now I go back and I watch that movie and I'm like, that was a fucking good movie. Like, why wasn't I feeling that, you know? And I find that happens to the general public with Kanye's music. Is like, I remember people hated on Life of Pablo at first. Now, like most discussions, like, well, it's right up there with My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, and like Yeezus getting talked about as his best album, you know. And it's just like, it's always hated on at first.
I think one thing just real quick musically with him that's really important, I think he needs to keep working with other artists on his albums. Like I think he needs like the Kid Cudis, the Chance the Rapper, like he needs those guys to kind of balance out his bad impulses, because I feel like sometimes if it's too much of just him, again, he kind of goes down that rabbit hole where maybe it gets a little too and that was kind of my problem with Jesus is King. Sometimes I feel like he needed a little bit more of that mainstream. Like, let's bring some guys, not that Kid Cudi's mainstream, but you know what I mean? Like, he needs some other artists to kind of like get
grounded a little bit.
Yeah, like reel him in a little bit. Be like, okay, we are making a song here. You know what I mean?
I like to, Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story.
Yeah.
You know, the scene, the part where he goes all off and he's got the army of didgeridoos and he's recording goat noises and he's recording titties and he's got that barn and like I think of Kanye like that a lot of the time, you know. It's like he like if you just let him go unfettered, that's exactly how he would be. That scene from that Dewey Cox movie, he'd be
totally, dude. And that's a great analogy, and that's why it was so awesome that last song he put out that Dre produced it, you know, because it's like, dude, like in this I feel like it's important again that he has that balance where it's like, okay, he's going to do his out there thing, but we need somebody to kind of reel him in. And, you know, we talked about this the last time with Eminem. Like, that's why Eminem needs like the, Elzon, whatever that guy's name is, Louis
Resto.
Louis Resto, yeah. And like, he needs those guys to kind of like keep his bad impulses at bay.
Yeah.
That's how a lot of artists are.
Yeah, and well, hopefully, I mean, Kanye apparently has a bunch of creatives with him right now, and hopefully, whatever they're doing, we get to fucking hear soon, because this kind of limbo. Man, I'm getting too old for Kanye's antics, man.
I know, man.
How could he keep demanding this type of fucking
we're too old,
mental
man.
energy.
We've been doing this for too many years. Hey, real quick, just because like I've been thinking about this, the Yeezus album. I want to say one thing real quick. We were talking about how ahead of its time that album is.
Yeah,
I feel like that's an album that does feel kind of cobbled together, where he like kind of took all these different things. But that was also an album where when I say I think it's a masterpiece and how ahead of its time it is, it feels like every single instinct he had is out there, as random as like, we're going to plop this in the middle of the song. We're going to put this weird like Jamaican dude just going crazy at the end of the song.
Oh, I fucking love that shit.
Every choice he made was perfect.
Oh yeah,
where like
it worked.
All just was like, yes, like this is awesome. There was nothing that felt like even though it was kind of disjointed, there was nothing that felt like misplaced. It was all just like, yes, love it.
Right up to ending it with the love song with Bound 2 with the
Incredible.
that hardcore sample based production just takes it back to basics for the last song. Fuck it.
Dude, when that dude comes in and he's like, I don't even know what the lyrics are. You know what I'm talking about? When that like random, and maybe that's what you're talking about. That like vocal comes in where that guy's like, da 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 da.
Yeah.
Like, dude, this shit is awesome, man.
Yeah, man. And like, fuck, I listen to like Life of Pablo, and to think that people, I mean, and again, that album went through, like, he released it and then like a couple months later he re-released it, and for a while I had the older version without even, but like now I listen to that album, I'm like, this is a perfect album. Like every single song on this is his longest album, and every single song is fantastic. Like
it's like we were talking about the other day, the song Famous, like if he would have put that out earlier in his career, that would have been like a #1 single ever.
Oh yeah. And I'm like, to think that people were doubting this material, and there are people that say, oh yeah, his first 3 albums were good or whatever. It's like, are you fucking out of your mind? Like the guy's been batting 1,000 for years, and it's like, okay, I will accept people being a little bit hot or cold on the last 2 albums, okay, even though I personally love them. I wouldn't put them at the top of the list, but I did love them both. And Kids See Ghosts, for me personally, I put way up there, because just him and Cudi doing an album together, whatever, it could have been them just fucking riffing over drums, I would have been happy with it. But I really do think they knocked that out of the park. But I'm okay with people being hot or cold over Ye and Jesus is King, but like, to say that he fell off after like graduation, it's like, dude, you obviously have not paid attention at all. Like, insane. Yeah, and even to say he fell off after Fantasy, like, there's no way, man. Yeezus and Life of Pablo are both masterpieces in their own right.
Hey, this is another random question, because I hardly ever talk to you, but I always think this when I listen to Kanye. What are your thoughts on the song Lost in the World?
Oh, man. Fucking emotional. Yeah, it's a tough one. Why do you bring up that song specifically?
I was like dazed for a second. The reason because I was thinking about it. The reason I bring up that song is because that's the song that I always go back to when I think, if I was going to show someone like what a genius this guy is, like this is the song I would put on. The production, like the layers, the vocals coming in from all over the place. It just felt like peak, like he had ascended, and it's so perfect. Yeah. The last song on that album, it felt like he had ascended the mountaintop, and it was just like the bass coming in, just everything coming in. It was like, fuck, dude, this song is like art.
Yeah, but you almost have to hear it within the context of the album to really like, but that you can almost say that about any of his fucking songs, though, but it's like, yeah, it's like, in its as a standalone, it's an incredible piece of art. But like, if I were to show that to somebody as like the thing, I'd be like, well, you got to listen to the whole album. Right. You know what I mean? I'd be worried that they didn't fully get it because they didn't hear the whole thing.
Yeah, it's funny, dude, because I ran a marathon when that album came out in 2010, I think it was, or 2010, and that was like my training music that I would listen to. And when I would be destroyed tired, if I was on like mile 6, mile 7 on the treadmill, whatever, and I was like dead tired, dude, every time the outro would come on to Runaway, right?
Yes.
For some reason, dude, something about that is like an injection of like adrenaline, and it's so weird because it's really not that.
It's nothing, like, right?
Yeah. It's just it's like one of those things though that just like hits me in a way that's like, this is insane. So that, and then that last song, just like, fuck, man, really, those 2 songs just take it to another level.
No, absolutely, they're masterpieces, and neither of them are, and both of those songs, I think you could say, like, nobody would have seen them coming from him prior to them happening, Runaway should not work as a song. I saw a meme just today that was like, it was like, oh, the piano Kanye used to make Runaway, and it was like a piano with just 3 keys on it. I was like, that's fucking hilarious. It's like, nothing about that song should work. And then the outro, where it's just like a long like auto-tune
Amazing, dude.
moaning that almost sounds like a guitar riff of some sort. I don't know what the fuck. How do you even pull that out of your ass, man?
Like when I think about that on a higher level, which is bullshit, but it literally sounds like a person like pouring their soul out. You know what I mean? Like as dumb as that sounds, it sounds like his way of trying to get all of his bullshit out of him. It's beautiful, man. I fucking love that. It's funny, dude. I don't know if have you ever watched the movie Eyes Wide Shut with like Tom Cruise, Nicole
It's a Kubrick movie, right? I've actually never watched it, but it's always been on my like. I need to watch that movie.
It will mess with you. It's incredible, but there's multiple times in the movie. This came out in 1999, so like well before Kanye was touching this. And not saying that either one of these things are the first people to do simple piano keys, but there's multiple times in Eyes Wide Shut when it's so creepy and just atmospheric, when it'll be like a very ominous scene and it'll be dead silent, and then you'll just hear that exact intro to Runaway, just like
really
ding ding. Not, and I don't even know if they go into the change like the other key. It's just like one key, exactly like the beginning of Runaway. Just
do you think that he's conscious of that? Like,
I think he had to be, no question. I mean, because as soon as I heard that song for the first time, I was like, holy shit, this is like Eyes Wide Shut.
Because like, Kanye would fuck with that type of movie for sure.
Oh, yeah, he probably was an extra in it.
It probably happens at his house sometimes, that type of shit.
Exactly.
God damn, man. I mean, I you know, it's one of those things where this conversation really happened at, and that's the thing, you know, it brings it back to that point of him always keeping people in the present, because like, again, this conversation is like a time capsule, you know? And I think that he knows that these little moments where he stirs up that hype and has people hanging on, just waiting, you know, like those moments where he gets the people going, I think he knows that people create memories in those moments. You know, I've seen people reflecting on the past Ye album delays, and like it's funny, right? It's like pleasant memories people have, and like to the end, the album always fucking comes out, and you're always happy, more or less happy with the result, and none of this fucking matters, right? But it's like while we're in this little stage, we're having these conversations that are and they're being immortalized, you know. This present moment, this is gone forever after this. Once Donda drops, this moment never happens again. This whole conversation, as our boy Saeed says, this conversation is irrelevant. It's one of my favorite Saeed quotes. I love.
Or as Saeed said, circumstances have changed.
Yes.
Dude, it's you're exactly right, man. It's like this entire conversation we're having in 2 weeks, when Kanye's in some padded room and his family left him, and he announces that he's part of the Church of Satan and he's never making music again. We'll be like, oh damn, dude, we might have to re-edit this.
I think next he just goes straight up gangsta. Like he just goes straight up gangsta, like he should have done in 2003. Like just like like he just surrounds himself with gang members constantly, and you're like, just like, people are all worried about like, what's he doing with all these Bloods, you know what I mean? He's just got the Bloods around him all the time, and he's like fucking bannied up, and I think that's the next step. He like totally regresses back into being a second. He's got all women around him all the time.
Gangsters. He makes a Kids See Ghost Part 2, but it's him and Tony Yayo.
Tony Yayo. Oh, God. Now that is a genius move that nobody would have ever expected.
Dude, imagine you're Tony Yayo. Like I mean, look, let's be real. You're pretty much just a dumb fuck, right? That's just like hanging around 50 Cent his entire life. And
consistently brought up in worst rappers of all time conversations.
Dude, and literally all you do is just hang out with 50 and just occasionally lean into the mic and be like, yo, like Tony Yayo. He was like DJ Khaled, right?
Yeah, he was. He was G-Unit's personal DJ Khaled.
Hey, but how insane was that song Drama Setter on his album with Eminem?
And Obi? Yeah, fuck yeah, man. That was a great song. That was a fucking great song, man. Yayo's verses were very strange on that, though. But
Yayo was one of those guys that
Obi
was
killed it.
almost like you couldn't like. Now we're just off on a tangent real quick, but like Yayo was one of those guys who was like so bad he almost tricked you into being like, is he actually kind of good? Like, is there something
Yeah.
about him that's like special?
Yeah. Does he just know that this works? You
And
know?
it's funny because that's how I felt about Obi when I first heard the song like Drips. I was like, dude, this guy fucking sucks. But then like you listen to him more and you're like, you realize what Obi was doing, right? And you're like, dude, this guy is, I couldn't have been more wrong. This dude is like on a different
natural
level.
Yeah, he's just an absolute natural MC that just he's just.
And how original, like he was talking and doing things like that nobody else was doing. It was crazy.
Absolutely.
Like his like dialect and just the way he would put words together, he was like making up his own language half the time.
Yeah, he's very underrated, man, undercredited, and a lot of do with his personal, there's a lot of stories about him out there that don't make him sound like the greatest person, but he fucking a very underrated rapper and fucking great albums. That's for goddamn sure. But nobody is better at balancing our artist versus our. Do we separate the art from the artist? Like, how much do we forgive the artist based on their art? Like, other than Michael Jackson, there's not a single figure in history that that teases that part of our brains more than Mr. Kanye West. So regardless, whatever happens with Donda, nobody else is making these podcasts happen. It's just, we truly have had somebody special in our midst, regardless what happens with this. Personally, for his own health and safety, I hope that this is the last time he does this. I really don't want to see this go any further, even if he's going to be completely safe. For my own sake, I can't take another one of these because it's too much. It's fun. It's been fun. It's fun every time. Give me the 10 out of 10 album that I can enjoy for the next year and salvage this ridiculous 2020 somehow rather than make it worse,
I guess my closing thoughts, well said, my closing thoughts on Kanye here tonight. I think that I agree. I want him to give us this last album, and I want him to get to a place where he realizes he's been at the peak so much, right? He's given us so much, like we just talked about for the last couple of hours, so many moments, cultural moments, music that's on a different level. He doesn't need to operate at that level anymore. It's like an athlete. It's like Jordan, or it's like anybody else. And you see how hard it is for athletes to walk away. Like you don't want to, but it's like he needs to start. What I pray for him is that he finds that balance where he doesn't have to live on top of the mountain, but he also doesn't have to live at the base of the mountain. He can kind of like hopefully get some meds, get some people around him that lets him, still live elevated, but not to where he has to suffer for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I just hope he knows how much the fans love him, man. And we'll always be here for him for sure. One way or another. And, I don't know what kind of help he needs or if he even needs to, like, I just find it even like just the idea that that somebody who's far more successful than any of us, that we can all sit around and talk about how much help he needs when, what the fuck are we doing with our lives? You know what I mean? It's just so, it's just so funny. Right. But that's the magic of Kanye West. So let's fucking hope for the best for this guy. And if he finds that stable place, then hey, more albums in the future for sure. But I don't want any more albums if it means this every time. 'Cause 10 albums is a great amount. It's like Tarantino, 10 great films and I'm out. Yep. I think 10 masterpieces, arguably some, in my mind, they're all masterpieces, is fucking fair. And he can relax a little bit after. So I agree with you 100%. I hope that, he realizes that he doesn't have to continue like this. He's given us a lot. It's been a long 16 years.
Crazy, man.
Or more. Wow. Of being at the top. So I don't think anybody, athlete or artist, is meant to keep that up. So, but thank you, my friend, for doing this. And I really appreciate it. Yeah, I hope we can, maybe we'll see what happens. Maybe we could do a little follow-up in a couple weeks or something like that, and
Absolutely.
maybe elaborate on some of the stuff that is kind of up in the air right now that we're not really sure how to talk about, that might be a little bit, difficult to talk about because we don't know what the fuck's going on. Perhaps if there's some clarity over the next couple of weeks, we can do a little follow-up and finish these thoughts, man, because we're in the midst of it right now, so time will tell.
The book of Kanye is constantly being written, and we're just reading it like page by page, trying to predict where it's going to go. But yeah, thanks for the invite, and I had a blast going down the highs and lows of Kanye.
Yeah, man, anytime, man. Once again, really appreciate you. You have a good night, bro.
Thanks, you too.
Easy, brother. Love you, man.
Later.
Peace.
About to take a plane to another plane, to another plane, to another plane, bumping Baka not nice while I'm trapping in the rain.